I am going to pray, and then I'm going to introduce Catherine and introduce myself if you don't know me, and we'll get started. So will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, who is our creator and our sustainer, we thank you for this night. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and try and dig deeper into who we are, who we have been created to be, and how to become more the people that you are calling us into. Thank you so much for Catherine and for her witness and her wisdom. And I pray that as we enter into this night, that you would speak to us in some way that we can understand, that we could grow closer to you. Amen.
Amen.
So if you don't know me, and I think looking at most names, I think I know everybody here, but my name is Ryan Young, and I'm an associate pastor at Northbrook United Methodist Church. And with us tonight, I have the pleasure to introduce Reverend Catherine Boothe Olson, who is an associate pastor at Northside Church. And so, Catherine, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks so much for letting me join you. Super excited to join with you to talk about the Enneagram. A couple quick facts about me. Grew up here in Georgia. Grew up in the Augusta, Evans area. Went to Young Harris College, which is a small Methodist school. Then went down to Valdosta State. My undergrad degree is in education. And both of my parents are educators, so I love the realm of kind of a Christian education. Equipping and empowering folks to learn, and then went to Candler School of Theology at Emory. Married for about 2 years, and I have 17-year-old triplet stepkids who will be showing up sometime around 7:30. So if all of a sudden there's a loud noise, it means someone probably came in, and I am in what used to be known as the formal dining room, which is now my office at home, but they'll be joining us sometime this evening for dinner. They all kind of are out and about, kicked out of the house, so we can eat later. But super great to be with you. As Ryan says, I share at Northside and Buckhead, and do a lot of things that associate pastors do. Like I oversee our worship committee and do a lot of Christian ed and discipleship and women's ministry stuff and staff resourcing and really whatever else my senior pastor tells me to do.
Don't we all? Right, Lori? So Catherine is a wonderful minister and a good friend, and someone who I credit with helping me get through the Board of Ordained Ministry. And so I'm very glad that she agreed to be with us tonight, because she's really knowledgeable about the Enneagram. So to kind of get us into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first learned about the Enneagram and what your experience with it has been?
Sure. So I first started learning about the Enneagram back in 2005. I did a CPE, a Clinical Pastoral Education Residency, through the Caring Counseling Center of Georgia, down off Claremont, and worked as a hospital chaplain at Atlanta Medical Center for a year. During that training process, one of the classes I took was a 12-week class on the Enneagram. It was sort of at the direction of my supervisor in that program. I got into the Enneagram. They spent a lot of money on me taking tests, and I think I spent the whole 12 weeks having no clue what number I am or was. And so kind of got started there, and sort of went, I love these systems, and let me tell you, it's not just the Enneagram. I love the Enneagram, but I like Myers-Briggs, and I like DISC. I like information. That speaks a lot to my Enneagram type, you'll find out. But yeah, so I started in 2005, and over the years, I have collected, in a sundry of, books, and I get a daily email, and I've gone to some retreats, but by far the coolest thing that has happened along my Enneagram journey is I have a younger brother who is married and lives in Jacksonville, and he was in town for a work event, and he told me he had no time to see me because he was too busy, but I could come hang out with him for a work event, and he wondered if I wanted to come. And I got to go to his work event. I snuck in, and Ian Morgan Cron signed my book. Like, total fangirl. So got to hear him speak a while back. But yeah, just sort of found it as something that felt like a real tool in my spiritual journey, and has become a real resource for helping me know myself better, and also probably love some people that I love a little better, and like some people I don't really love that much, at least try to like them a little better. So yeah, that's where I got started. So for about 15 years, been trying to engage with it almost in some ways every day. Usually it's my annoying email from the Enneagram Institute. And I'm like, that is not true. Don't say that. That would be so hard to do. So based on daily words of advice based on your number, they're super challenging. So there you go.
That's a great story. That's better than mine. My wife asked me about that recently, and I was like, I don't know. People were talking about it, so I read a book. So that's a much more in-depth, substantive answer than I have for how I came upon the Enneagram. But why do we study the Enneagram? What is useful within the Enneagram for us to delve into?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I would hope you would be studying Enneagram, part of my prayer for you, some of you may have heard me joking around a little bit as we got going, that people really want to know their number. And sometimes knowing numbers are important, like knowing, what your salary is going to be, or how much your mortgage is, or what something costs. Numbers are important. Our finance people tell us that all the time. But when it comes to the Enneagram, so much of the Enneagram is understanding, not kind of putting you in a box and saying, well, you're an extrovert, or you're an introvert, or you're a thinker or a feeler, which are helpful if you kind of live in that Myers-Briggs world. But something about the Enneagram I love, the goal of the Enneagram is to know yourself. And to not only know yourself, but to be aware of what motivates you. How did God wire you? What inspires you? What activates you? What gets you curious? And if you know those things about yourself, you can start noticing when you're really
Okay, that's fun. It's always funny to see what position you get frozen in.
Oh no, she froze for everybody, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's more fun than watching Andrew giggle after it happens.
I know,
That's
right?
what I was gonna say. Actually, that's what I was laughing at.
You say,
That was great.
we can see you, right, Andrew?
Andrew's
All right.
dying.
She left, and she'll come back in.
How we roll. Maybe she was like, these people.
Yeah, she was done with this.
I know she's stressing. So,
hello again.
I don't know much about the
Hi.
Enneagram. Hello.
Hello. I don't know exactly what happened. All of a sudden, y'all were just gone. Or maybe it was just me who was gone. But I'm back. Don't know what happened.
Welcome
Sorry
back.
about that.
Well,
Sorry about that.
you were frozen in a very adorable way.
Oh, good, because that's not usually true.
I know.
So I don't know where I froze, but I really hope that you would get to know yourself better, and knowing yourself better, that you would be able to do three things. That as you know yourself better, you would be able to more faithfully love yourself, more faithfully love your neighbors, whoever your neighbors are, and more faithfully love the God who created you and created your neighbors. So the real goal of this is loving self, loving neighbor, and loving God better. That's our goal. And engaging the Enneagram. That's not everybody's goal with the Enneagram, but I hope that would be our goal.
So you talked a little bit about knowing yourself and why that's one of the main reasons we want to do this. But we talked a little bit earlier. What do you feel like is the difference between self-knowledge and self-awareness?
Sure. So two things I'll speak to. Many of you will know Isaiah 43 that says, "But now thus says the Lord who created you, O Jacob, who formed you, O Israel. Fear not, I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine." And then this whole list of when you walk through the waters, I will be with you. And when you walk through the fire, I'll be with you. So getting to know a God who would create all of us so differently, and understanding, like, why do I respond this way when Andrew responds completely differently? and Emily responds differently, and Ryan responds differently. And so kind of going like, wait, am I even aware of the differences in how we interact? So that's sort of self-knowledge. Like, do I know what I'm doing? Like, oh, I know that I had 2 cookies last night. Why in the world did I go get a third? That's self-awareness. Like, I'm aware that I got a third because I was bored, or I was feeling lonely, or I was still hungry. What the awareness to know what motivates our activity. And that's a lot of what the Enneagram will help you start understanding, like, what motivated me, inspired me to respond that way? Like, why did I absolutely lose my mind on my spouse? Like, what did he do to trigger that? Because is that about me? Or was that about him? Or is that about how we work together or don't? And so starting to go like, you know, people in your life, you're like, why in the world did they respond that way? Like, I would never respond that way. And hopefully the Enneagram will start helping you understand and just be aware. A word of warning. It is more important to know yourself than to know your neighbor, right? So this isn't that, who remembers being on an airplane? I don't. I miss them. I want to be on one, right? This is put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then put the oxygen mask on your neighbors. It might be helpful to know your spouse or your children or your best friends or your parents' number. Hopefully that will help you to be more gracious to you, towards them. But let's start with like the plank in our own eye before the speck in each other's eye. Please do not leave this and call your best friend and go, I figured out why you do all those annoying things. It's because you're that number. Now I know why you're annoying. Love you. No, this is like, oh, this is why I do those annoying things. And this is how maybe I could work with not doing them. So a little self-awareness beyond just self-knowledge.
Yeah, and spouses tend to not like being typed by you. So if you're using this for relational knowledge, I would allow your spouse to type themselves.
I've also heard children don't like being typed. They don't take kindly to it either.
I think that probably fits. So I wouldn't do that either, but invite them to learn their type. So we went through a lot of things. How can the Enneagram, as a tool for self-knowledge, help us to know what it is that God has made us for? How can it help us to grow closer to God?
Sure. So we have to start by recognizing that we're going to talk in a few minutes about how there are 9 numbers on the wheel. There are way more than 9 personalities, right? But we will talk about how there's kind of 9 general personality types. And then there's a whole lot of ways that you can change the color. Let's say if each of those like numbers is a color, like 8s are red. Have you ever gone to Home Depot and asked for red paint? And they will show you 4,800,000, varieties of red. Like, is it orangey red, or is it purpley red, or is it bulldog red, or is it gamecock crimson, whatever that color is, South Carolina? Sorry if there's any South Carolina fans. We love you. We just don't like that color. So in saying that, you get to know yourself better. Something we're not going to get into today, but I hope you'd come back next week. We're going to talk about how each of these numbers have healthy versions of themselves and unhealthy versions of themselves. So you can start going, wow, I'm pretty healthy right now. I'm doing what I do when I'm in a good space. I feel well nourished. I'm connected to the living water. I've been fed on the bread of life. And then you can start going, oh, I am a not so healthy version of myself. You can start seeing ways that what happens when you grow in health, what happens in stress. So hopefully as we kind of dig into this, you're going to start knowing some patterns and trends in your own behavior, and you're going to then have the choice to keep them or get rid of them. Like, do I like that about myself? Oh, wait, I could actually choose differently. I think a lot of times we just go, well, I've always done it that way. That's just who Catherine is. Well, God calls us to be transformed, to be redeemed, to be renewed, to become new creations in Christ. And so this is a bit of your invitation, becoming a newer version of yourself, kind of taking a spiritual upgrade.
Yeah, and that transformation happens when we know who we are and
Mm.
why we are that way, right? That's, I think, how we can have some direction to grow.
Yeah, Ryan and I had kicked around a quote, one of Frederick Buechner's quotes. Many of you may have heard it before. Do you know the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need? And each of these numbers, there are going to things that just naturally easy and good. You go to them quick, and we need you to live out of those things that you're great at. And then there's going to be some things that are challenging and that maybe you'll always only be okay. But do you know the people in the community? I mean, we're constantly called to community, whether it's, Romans 12 or Corinthians 12, that call to be a part of the body of Christ and to go, wow, there are people who have different gladnesses, but also different needs. So how do we line those up? How do we make choices around those?
So I hope everybody had a chance to take one of the Enneagram tests to kind of get an idea of how you test and how your number tests. And I will say that every time I take a test, I test as a 2, which is the sort of the helper archetype. But as I read this book and I read the descriptions, I've begun wondering a lot more if I'm more of a 9, which is sort of the peacemaker. Both of them describe me a good bit. So I will say that to say that if you took the test and you got a number and you looked into it and you're like, that's not me at all, that could well be true. The test is not the end all be all. As Catherine said, you're more than a number. So I think we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the numbers. And I just want to remind you, if you have questions, use the chat box to throw those out and we'll get to them. But Catherine, do you know your number?
I do know my number, but as I mentioned at the beginning, when I did my CPE residency, I took the test. And there are, there's $9 there are free tests, and there are $9 tests, and there are $12 tests, and there are like $99 tests. I took the test and I constantly came out as one number. I knew deep down in my soul that was not right. I'm like, but so obviously I'm a good liar, not something I'm proud of, but at least on tests, I somehow seem to lie, or at least not present the full version of myself, which is actually really disappointing. Sadly, that ability goes really well with my number, right? I'm like, oh, I do what they say I do. So I took the test, didn't seem to be true, but I kept sort of hovering in this kind of one area. And it is interesting. Some of my dearest friends were like, we know what you are. And they were people I trusted. I knew they had my best interests in mind. They wanted me to be healthy, a group of seminary friends. And they said, we think you're this number. And I was like, no, that is the last number I want to be. And it is fully who I am. And how I finally knew they were right. I was reading, one of the classics. It's called The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Richard Russo and Russ Hudson. Yep, a couple of you got it. I came to realize what my number does when they're stressed out is exactly what I do when I am having a full and complete meltdown. I thought everyone melted down like I did because I was single into my late 30s and lived by myself for like 10 years. And I thought, oh, everybody must do this when they're really stressed out. Y'all don't. So for me, I'll highlight, take tests, read books, talk to people who know and love you, find out what the numbers do in health, find out what they do in stress. Ultimately, the number doesn't matter when it's said and done. Like, you're not going to get to heaven and Peter's not going to be like, welcome, Catherine, you can now go live in the house with all the same numbers as you. Yay. But I do think I catch myself going like, ooh, these are some things that I do when, I can't figure out, like when I catch myself going, ooh, I must be kind of healthy today. Yay, I should push myself, challenge myself. Or, ooh, I am doing like what an unhealthy version of myself does. And sometimes I have to go, why? Like, am I like, I don't even know I'm in a bad place until I start doing it. And then I'm like, so now it's like a trigger. It's like a little bell. Like I'm like Pavlov's dog. I'm like, oh, I'm doing that thing that unhealthy versions of myself do. So take tests, like I said, read books, talk to other people who know you well. we'll engage. And if you're kind of struggling, we're going to give some tips how you might get closer to your number. Even if you don't get your exact number. I'm happy to help. For those of you who feel like you have to achieve and get to your number, I'm here with you. You can email me. We'll talk. We'll figure it out together.
So I'm gonna. It's about 6:30, so I'm gonna ask Catherine to start getting into more of the introduction to the numbers of the Enneagram. But I will say that the way that it's set up may be a little bit maddening for people who like things nice and orderly. There are 3 triads to the Enneagram, and that's the way that we're going to talk about them. So there are 3 sets of 3 numbers, and there's what are you calling them? There's gut, feeling. No, there's gut or intuition.
Yes. So there are
feeling.
Yep, there are 3 triads. The first one we're going to start with is sort of those who are in the gut intuition triad. I'm going to share my screen. I think let's see. Is that coming up? Are y'all able to see that photo? Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's
there. Perfect. All right. So we're going to start. This is going to annoy a few of you, and I'm very sorry. Be patient with me. We're starting with the number 8. And the ones are like, no, 1 is first. We're starting with 8. So 8, 9s, and 1s are in the gut triad. They have typically a very strong sense of intuition. They know kind of a quick knee-jerk reaction about how they not just feel, but what they should do and how they're thinking. So we're going to start with 8s. 8s are known as the boss, the challenger, the leader. They are the protector. They often live by the mantra, it's my way or the highway. They are fiercely protective of the vulnerable. I have a number of female 8 friends. Let me offer a word of warning and comfort if you are a female 8. You probably have been called some very not nice words. People have not always complimented your leadership skills. They have found you to be too aggressive and too strong. But a lot of folks who find themselves at 8s end up in the military, end up as lawyers, end up as kind of an advocate for the underdog. But you will also see, I know an 8 who is a United Methodist deacon and a therapist. They will show up as children's and student ministers, but they are not afraid of a fight. And one of the most disappointing things you can do to an 8, if an 8 challenges you and says, you're wrong, we need to do this differently, the worst thing you can do is ignore them. They abhor the silent treatment because they're looking to engage. They want to debate for the sake of debate, and you have just let them go by silencing them, by shutting them out. They are fiercely loyal. They are very forgiving. And of course, everybody can be loyal and everyone can be forgiving, but they take it up a notch. My brother is an 8. He ran a full marathon in Disney World with the flu to prove he could do it about 5 years ago. The other day, he decided that he hadn't run more than 9 miles in a couple weeks. He was running 19 miles for COVID-19. They had this, like, they love a challenge. Give them a goal, they will meet it and often exceed it. But they do not back down easily. One of the unfortunate lies that an 8 has been told is that no one will protect them unless they protect themselves. And no one will protect the ones they love unless they protect them. So they are always on guard for protecting one another. I'm going to take this graphic down and put it up every little, kind of once in a while. So next to the 8 are our 9s. 9s are our peacekeepers. There are harmonizers. They're connectors. They're mediators. 9s understand every number and every perspective and every concern better than anyone else. They can sit at the dinner table and be empathetic towards everyone at the table. Consequently, 9s are often exhausted. They tend to be the most tired number I often say the table. I think of a big round, like Lord's table, right? The 9 is exhausted because they are trying so hard to make sure everybody else feels included and engaged and welcome, and that no one's picking at each other or causing a stink. They want harmony. They also can often only do one thing at a time. The last time I got to lead a session on the Enneagram, I did it with a co-facilitator who works in our women's ministry at the church. And she is a 9. And we were talking about how we organize our schedules. 9s can only do a couple things in a day. And she'd be like, I break down my day in chunks, like my morning, my afternoon, my evening, and my night, because I need enough time to like recenter and be at peace and be meditative and peaceful. And I'm like, I block off my day in like 15-minute increments. And she's like, yeah, but that's not how God calls us to be a person of peace. It makes you a person of anxiety. And I'm like, I got stuff to get done. Don't be late. So 9s often need to nap. They're known for being a little bit slothful, and it's not because they're not engaged or committed. Their energy level is so committed to everyone else, and they're so aware of everyone else. They kind of they get worn out really easily. And then our 1s, and then I'll take a half minute and see if there are any kind of questions. 1s are perfectionists. There are reformers, there are advocates, there are moralists. 1s have a clear sense of right and wrong. 1s are very detail oriented typically. They know the right way to load the dishwasher. They know the right way to take out the trash. They certainly know the right way to use every moment in a worship service. And they might send you an email every Sunday afternoon about how you didn't use your time most efficiently, or the right way to do that. Now, this is one of the hard things for 1s. While they want everybody else to kind of be perfect, they are so much harder on themselves than they are on anyone else. They also want to be perfect themselves, and they believe the lie that no one loves them unless they do it right. So everybody has these sort of like things, like lies they believe. And that the lie for the 1 is that like they're never good enough. And they're, like they're so worried about being criticized for getting it wrong or letting other people down. However, we never see them judging themselves. When they're unhealthy, all we feel like they do is judge us. They're super detail oriented, very methodical. They often need a lot of control because they're trying to get it right. So those are your 8s, 9s, and 1s. They live in that gut triad. They have a strong sense of either protecting, or a strong sense of peace, or a strong sense of perfection. Those are our kind of our 8, 9s, and 1s. I know I'm going kind of quick. But so let me check and see if there's any initial questions about either of those 3 numbers. And Ryan, you think you might live in that 9 category, right?
Yes. Yeah, I feel like I do. What I think is interesting about the gut triad is it seems like the 8s and the 1s both have this sense of I need for it to be done right. I need to do it, and 9s sort of have a sense of I'm going to fade into the background and just take on whatever anybody else is putting out.
I would say that is very true. I will mention, we're going to do this at the end, in addition to the book, Ian Morgan Cron's book, The Road Back to You. I will mention a really helpful place I go when I'm looking for a quick summary is the Ennea app. They have kind of each number listed in kind of their themes and their characteristics, and kind of who are some famous people that fit that number. So I'll type it in. It's free initially, but if you want all of the features, you do have to I think pay $2.99. But it's a good one.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows, a quick question. Go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, I was just going to also say, as someone who consistently tests as a 2, but kind of feels like maybe I'm a 9. And I think maybe we had a conversation about this last week, is a lot of times when you test the way that you think you should be. So one of the things that's really helpful for me in looking into things is to really focus, if you're reading up on numbers, on motivations and fears, because those are the things that I feel like I connected with most.
It is much more, that is very true. So the Enneagram is not who you think you should be or you want to be or someone in your life told you you need to be. It is about being really honest about who you are, what motivates you, what inspires you, what is your fear? What is that fundamental fear? Like, I am not loved because fill in the blank. Some of those things are going to help you. I'll take a half step back as you're hearing these numbers. I will tell you, I know of someone in every one of these numbers, not only in my family, but on the church staff I work with. They are all needed. They are all valuable. They are all helpful to the kingdom of God, and all of them occasionally annoying, because we all can be occasionally annoying, particularly when we're tired and we're living through a pandemic. So I'm going to ask, and maybe this is helpful for y'all, because I don't know y'all as well as y'all know each other. Is anyone in this group really confident that they're an 8? You can like wave your hand or use a little feature. Anyone think they're an 8? I was just kind of giving Ryan and Andrew and Lori a chance to see any of our 8s. Your challengers, your aggressors. You probably have one of them on your trustees committee or your finance committee. They're somewhere. They're around. But, I mean, they can be a great advocate for taking risk and doing new things. Anyone who's a 9, like you are a peacekeeper. You are a mediator. You bring people together. The world often exhausts you. So got a few 9s in the group, could be 9s. Anyone who's a 1, you are a perfectionist. You have a strong, really clear sense of right and wrong. And I'm sorry, 1s, hard place to function as a 1 is in a church, in a community of broken people living into chaos. And you're like, no, there's one right way to do this. We are taking down that picture of alien Jesus and we are repainting the wall. And everybody's like, well, we need to think about it and have a committee. And y'all are like, the right thing to do to welcome new people into the church is to take down alien Jesus. And they're like, so, okay.
I'm a 9 married to a 1. Oh, I'm diagnosing him, but anybody who's met him will say he's most assuredly a 1. And that is a really interesting, the conflict of order with the person who is always right. It's fun some days.
So there are 2 questions about testing, it looks like, in the chat. If we want to get to those or get to those later. But I also really want to come to Northside and see Alien Jesus now.
Alien Jesus is not at Northside. It was at a previous church. It was just a really old photo with old man, like kind of looked like old man Jesus. And I think the sun just got to him and he slowly turned green. But so-and-so from such and such family had given him at some point and he just couldn't be taken down. He had to stay in the whatever Sunday school room that was. And we debated Alien Jesus for a long time. I learned a lot about ministry through that experience. But anyways, all right. So a couple questions about the test. Take the test not on who you think you should be, but who you really are. 1. I do believe typically the more you pay for a test, the better the results are because you put more time into them. What you get for free is free. I will say, I usually try to get people in their triad, first. That seems to make the most sense. And if you're testing 2 numbers in the same triad, that's helpful. Or if you get 2 numbers next to each other, it's probably one of those 2 numbers and you're just picking up the flavoring of the number next to you. And we're going to talk about those wings some more next week. I would also just start asking folks. Let's get to know each other and we can talk about how weird your test is. Or maybe something that will help is if you find out your number and find out where your number goes in health or stress, you go, oh, I know my number, but I'm just being a really healthy version of myself. If you're a 3, a 6, or a 9, and your top 3 numbers are 3, 6, 9, that makes perfect sense because 3, 6s, and 9s move around to each other in health or dishealth. So we can try to figure out maybe some of the patterns. I don't know if that answered Jenny and Ann's question, but maybe you've got us in the right direction. All right, y'all ready to move to the next triad? 2s, 3s, and 4s. 2s, 3s, and 4s are your heart triad. Let me tell you this. Anyone in this group could probably test as a 2. The most beloved feature in the South, particularly amongst church folks, are 2s. Most Southern church folks will test false positive as a 2. Now, there are some of you who are really, truly helpers. There are some of you who have bought into the thought that you should be a helper, because what good Christian folks do is say, yes, I will bring a casserole. And yes, I will serve on the hospitality committee. And yes, I would love to help you with the Easter egg hunt. And yes, I would love to fold bulletins. And yes, my grandmother is a true 2. She's not Southern, but she is a definite 2. We love 2s at the church. We take advantage of you. We burn you out. We thank God for you. We pray for you. We want the rest of you to become a 2. But let me tell you something about a 2. 2s don't think they are loved for who they are. 2s believe they are loved for what they do. And that's why they keep doing. 2s, when they're really unhealthy, become the worst of an 8. They say yes to things that are not wholly yeses. They say yes because they feel like they have to. And then they get really bitter that they're the only one who showed up, because they never wanted to come anyway. They just thought they had to or needed to or should. 2s do a lot of shoulding. They should themselves a lot. 2s also, do any of you have helicopter people in your family? Like, they want to help you when you don't want help. Like, they won't sit down at the dinner table and just eat because they want to offer you more hot gravy and another biscuit, which is lovely, except you don't want more gravy and another hot biscuit. It's no longer helpful. It's suffocating. I'll admit, I'm a little hard on 2s. I tested as a 2 for a really long time. And I was like, I am not that nice or helpful. I'm just not. I mean, like, I want to be nice. Yes. I want to have the fruit of the spirits. But like, if it's between someone wanting to come and sit in my office for an hour and tell me their deepest feelings or me getting something done, I really would rather get something done, and I'll get to their feelings once I got that done. A 2 will sit with you and be with you and support you because that is the helpful thing to do. But they are really afraid that they're not loved for who they are, but for what they do. Yeah, I'm not a 2. Some of you might really be 2s. I know our volunteers at church who are 2s. They're just so genuinely helpful. Like, and they're caretakers, and they enable people, and they give, and then they give till they're exhausted. So remember, every number has healthy traits and unhealthy traits. I'm probably a little harsh on our 2s. And then anyone who's a 2, this time I'll kind of do them as we're looking at them. Anyone know they're a 2? I'm like, if you see them, Andrew, Ryan, Lori, do not take advantage of these people. You know, if you ask them to do something, they'll say yes. Like, when you're desperate, you'll call them. Don't call them every time. Someone else can say yes. But no, we love our 2s. All right, 3s. 3s are your succeeders, your challengers, your initiators, your performers. 3s have a goal. 3s live by the mantra, like, I got stuff to do. Like, get stuff done. 3s can be told that they're exhausting because they are doers, and they are doing. Now, the thing is, they do because they want to get a gold star. And I need to tell you, my moment of confession, I am a 3. I am a full-on complete 3. I am a doer. I am a get stuff doneer. I don't like being bored. I have a little ADD. 3s keep doing even when they're exhausted. And as a result, when we get exhausted, we melt down because we believe the lie, we are only loved if we're successful. I should have noticed this when I wrote a theology paper on the theology of success, right? I also this week got a medal in the mail from my good friend who's a 9. She sent me a quarantine medal. It is the greatest gift I have ever gotten. It said, I made it through today. I am achieving. I am succeeding in the quarantine. Okay, part of the problems with 3s. Sometimes we excel at things and achieve things not because we value it, not because it's what God's called us to, but we want to be noticed because we're so afraid of not being noticed. And so if we do a big project and no one celebrates it or thanks us, if we're in a really bad place, that can hurt our feelings versus just saying, I wasn't doing it for someone else. I was doing that for Jesus. We are unhealthy. 3s create lists to mark things off their list that they already did. Like I do that all the time. I'm like, ooh, let me put on my calendar what I already did today. We're just so success oriented, so goal oriented. There are not a lot of threes typically in the church. It's pretty unusual to find threes in the church, just because it's not really affirmed in the same way. But yeah, real goal setters. Now, I said this was a heart triad, right? So twos have a really big, loving heart. Threes have a really big heart, and we are so petrified of how much we feel because we don't trust our feelings, because we're afraid our feelings will derail us from getting stuff done. So we are really good chameleons. We are, like I said earlier, really good liars because we want to achieve what other people want. And I thought everyone wanted me to be a 2. I'm not that nice. I am a 3. Threes organize their closet, not because they need it to be organized, but because if you come over and saw my closet, you would be so proud of me. That's what threes do. Like, I'm a 3 who already set the dinner table, so when my kids came home, they will know what a good stepmom I am because I already set the table because I achieved that. Mm-hmm. And then 4s. All right, we're moving on. I'm going to put up the little picture again. It should be coming up. Do y'all see it? Ryan, you got it?
Yep, it's there.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
So just so you see again, so the 4s, they're your artists, they're your romantics, they're your individualist. A little bit about the 4. If you are confident that you are no number and that you are too unique to have a number, and that any type of device told you you should be limited to some number, you are likely a 4. You don't want to be labeled a 4 because you are so much more unique and special and talented and creative than any 9-number system. But you're probably a 4. 4s are just that. They are creative. They are, if you look at the list of like when you start seeing names of 4s, Ian Morgan Cron's a 4. They're often your writers. They're your poets. They're your musicians. They create beauty in the world. However, they also fundamentally believe the lie that they live in a world where no one understands them, that they are a misfit, that they are too unique to be truly understood. The reason everyone needs at least one 4 in their life. 4s do feelings really big, high highs and low lows. 4s love melancholy. And if you go through a season of loss, death of a loved one, they can lament better than anyone else you know. They will grieve with you. They will lament with you. They will be sad with you. And they'll just stay that way until they need to create beauty. And they move on. I don't know if I asked if anyone was a 3. So I didn't find out all of the 3 folks. But there's a good number of 3s around here. They're super hardworking. They're going to get stuff done. Who are our 4s? Who are your artists? Who are your romantics? Do you have any artists, romantics? Yeah, a couple of them. They just feel in a way that the rest of us can't always relate to. They want you to be really authentic. They have a strong sense of needing to know, like, not like I look at a piece of artwork and I'm like, oh, that's a particular place, and they're like, this artwork makes me feel a particular way. Yeah. So someone said Ryan was like Van Gogh is his favorite 4. There are a lot of artist 4s. I was shocked that Ian Morgan Cron was a 4 until I actually saw him in person, because he is an Episcopalian priest who's also a therapist, who's a writer, and he was up there wearing like denim on denim with these really quirky glasses, and I'm like, oh, you are a little quirky artist. I totally pictured you as someone else in my head. But he does a really good job in the book talking about life as a 4. So we're in the heart triad. These 2s, 3s, and 4s have a really strong sense of feeling, and feel, even though someone like me will tell you I have no feelings and I deny my feelings. That's just a 3 not wanting to get hurt, because we don't want to fail. We're really bad at failing. We just have lessons to learn from opportunities of failure. All right, questions about 2s, 3s, 4s? I know we're going kind of fast, and some of you are probably going, I do all of those things. Yeah, but not as much as others.
There was a question a little bit earlier that I wrote a little bit too, but Emily asked what the lie that nines believe is.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if I know that one off the top of my head, but I'll take a look. I used to have a sheet with all the lies they believe, and I think Ian does them all, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I wrote, just from my memory, I wrote that nines are really worried that asserting our own feelings and desires will cause conflict with other people in their lives.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like, I was trying to look. It's on page 66, the deadly sin of the nine. I was trying to see if I could like catch it, see if I could find it really quick, where he says, but I think a lot of that is true. Like nines are so afraid of having their own voice. Like, what if I actually like make a decision and stand up for myself and tell someone no, and I don't keep the peace? Will someone love me even when I disagree with them, when I'm willing to stand up against them? Usually nines can go with the flow. Don't ever ask a nine where to go for dinner, because they're going to say, well, where do you want to go? And you're going to say, well, I want to go where you want to go. And they're going to say, I'm fine going anywhere that makes you happy. Anywhere is good. I just like food. I don't want to be hungry. And you're like, so one of the tips somewhere in a book I read is if you live with a nine, to treat them not as a child, but as a like, hey, give me 2 places. Like, I have 3 places I'd like to go. Which of these 3 do you like the best? Because then they know they're not upsetting you. They're still keeping the peace because they chose one of your choices, but they didn't have to assert themselves. Does that sound at all true, Ryan?
Yeah, that sounds, Leslie, does that sound true?
Most assuredly, yes.
Yeah, like it helps to say to a nine, like, because they don't want to offend and they want to keep the peace, to let them know options that both keep the peace, or that all keep the peace. Like, and I've also said, to some nine friends, like, I've asked, like, is there someplace you want to go today? And if they say no, I believe them. And then I just pick where I want to go, because they don't care anyways. And if they did care, I've already given them permission to speak up. I mean, this is what you do with people you love, right?
More than anybody else that I know, just super decision fatigue, because to make the choice for everyone in my family is an impossible task.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I'm going to keep going just with a little bit of mindfulness at a time. All right, so the next triad, so we did gut triad, we did heart triad, and now we're going to do brain triad, which, yes, they are typically really smart, but it's not just that they're smart. Our 5, 6, and 7s first go to like what they're thinking. So 5s are your thinkers, observers. They're your investigators. They love knowledge for the sake of knowledge. I would add the title of researcher to 5s. They want information for the sake of information. So have you ever met, like, maybe you've had a printer go down? Oh, printer stopped working. You have a couple options. You could go out and, order a new printer, and it would be delivered anywhere from 2 days to like 2 months from now, because we're in a pandemic. But you could order a new printer and it would be delivered. Or you could spend 8 hours researching the history of printers and understanding all the gadgets and gizmos in a printer. And then you could work to fix the printer to see if you ascertain the information correctly. And you would be so smart, because not only did you do the research, but you thought and you observed and you fixed that printer. But instead, so you fixed the printer, took 8 hours of your day, you got no work done, but you fixed a printer because you have that much information. And you know everything from the Gutenberg press to like modern day laser printers. Those are your 5s. My dad is a 5. My dad is an analytical chemist, right? I mean, he loves research and information. Typically 5s are introverts. There often aren't always the same kind of correlations with every number, but overall, most 5s are introverts. They see the world as unpredictable and chaotic and a little scary. And so as a result, they withdraw into their mind, the information they can learn. They can be a little detached, a little bit of a loner. They're super left brain analytical. They don't like feelings very much because feelings are not logical or reliable. Our creative service director at the church is a strong 5. And I'll hear her say things like, I am making a choice to be in community today because I value community. I would much rather go home and sit in my garden and paint. And I'm like, you would do what? Like you're going to skip like hanging out with friends to go sit by yourself and paint or read? And she's like, yes. I don't really relate, but it's helpful to know how important that is to her. But yeah, the lie a 5 believes is that in presenting themselves to the world, getting out of their heads and getting into their bodies, that they are putting themselves at risk. They think that their safety is all very internal. As long as they can stay inside, no one's going to hurt them. And the reality is none of us were made to live alone. I feel really bad for the 5s who are parents of small children during this pandemic because they have nowhere to go. They can never be alone. They can never go read a magazine or research something or go back to the lab. They are stuck like being touched by little people. Do we have any 5s in the group? Couple 5s. 5s are, I've also learned if you're in a relationship with a 5, they can just kind of disappear on you. Like they were there and then you became too overwhelming and too loud and too exhausting. And so they just ghost you. They can like just disappear to protect themselves. It is not usually rude. It's just, I'm done. I am overwhelmed. You cannot control me. You have like invaded my space and I need to go introvert. I need to go 5. Next is a 6. 6s are your loyalist. I call them the Susie safeties of the world. They're your questioners. They're your skeptics. Some things about a 6. 6s know where every emergency exit is in a room. 6s know how long you can keep out mayonnaise at a potluck supper. There are actually more 6s in society than any other number because they keep us alive. They like develop seat belts and oxygen masks. I bet every 6 has figured out how to make, mask. And they've been giving them away because they keep people safe and secure. They are the most community-oriented number of the group. And the reason being is they've survived. They don't die because they know what they need to do to stay alive. Ian Morgan Cron told a story about his aunt who is a 6. And when she gets on a plane, she would literally count the number of headrests back to her seat because it doesn't always correlate with your row number. That way she would know how many headrests she had to touch when the plane would crash and she had to get off. 6's favorite book are worst case scenarios. Like how to survive a disaster is like a resource book of a 6. That's why they're your Susie safeties. They keep us all alive. But they are also, they're also worried that kind of like a 5, that the world is a dangerous and scary place. But instead of like going into their mind and researching and investigating like a 5 would, they just become very practically oriented. Like they care for the group. Like if the plane goes down, you want to keep the 6 with you because they're going to find safe water. They're going to know how to use the tarp. They probably know how to use one match to keep us alive. But they're not always very inner directed because they're so aware of what's going on in the world that they don't often know what they need or what they want. Whereas a 3 is so aware of what they want and need. 6s are not very much so, but there are probably a lot of 6s in the group. 6s also often don't like being pointed out in the same ways that 5s don't. They're not often very bold people. Not every 6, but a lot of 6s. Any 6s in the group? See a couple 6. Some people are like, trying to figure out. Yep. All right. And then last is our 7. 7s are our enthusiast. They are the life of the party. 7s are always rushing off. An unhealthy 7 is always rushing off the next fun adventure. So the 7s want to avoid pain. They want to find fun. One of the negative habits of a 7 is 7s can be very prone to addiction, any type of addiction, because they don't want to feel what they're feeling. They want to go to the next party. Our director of adult discipleship is a 7. He refuses to redo curriculum. He's always writing new curriculum. He's always planning a party. And I'm always like, where is that sign-in sheet for your class so we can send a follow-up email? He's like, no sign-in sheet. hey, when are you going to do that curriculum again? That was really creative. I can't believe you wrote like a whole class on Star Wars and the gospel from scratch by yourself. He's like, why would I ever do something twice? That's so boring. And I'm like, when was the last time you followed up with our volunteer coordinators? He's like, I'll catch him when I catch him. And I'm like, I regularly want to like tack his feet to the floor, but he's so creative and so excited about what's next. They are wide-eyed. They are energetic. Some people call them monkey-minded. Like they're like ADDing, which is fun when you see them at their best, because they're like, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could go there, or we could build this ministry, or we could create that opportunity, and we could change this. They are not afraid of failing. They are not afraid of new things. They are not afraid of getting it wrong. They are petrified of being bored, stuck, and kept in the past. They're really big global thinkers. But the real struggle with them is what happens when they have to deal with life that has pain in it. Because every life has loss and sorrow and suffering. And a really healthy 7 can live in that a little bit. Unhealthy 7s, not so well. They will escape it, whether it's running or alcohol or pornography or an unhealthy relationship. They just don't want to feel that pain because they're an enthusiast. And enthusiasts don't feel pain. So they are super creative. So that's your 7s, 5, 6, and 7s, and they're thinkers. They're in the brain triad. Questions about Ryan was saying yes. 7s typically have FOMO. They are so afraid of missing out. Like they do not want to miss the party. They don't want to be left out. Yeah. I love a 7 when I have free time and extra money. Like you want to travel with a 7 if you're going somewhere new. Now, if you're looking for like a relaxing mountain house or a few moments by the beach, like take a 9. You could sit like on the beach all day long and do nothing, and you will have achieved a perfect day. If you want to see every stop in a new town, take a 7. They will also find every dive. They will find every fancy restaurant. One of the books that I think is super fun, I'll show you the cover. It is called The Enneagram Made Easy. It's a picture book. And they talk about how each of these numbers would respond at a dinner table. And if any of y'all are Instagrammers, a lot of the Instagram folks who talk about the Enneagram have kind of caricatures and graphs, but I'm just going to work through them real quick. So an 8 at a dinner table is like, pass it down here, pass it down here now. Like they're challenging, they're aggressive, they're looking out to make sure like they get food, or they're the friend who won't speak up gets a friend. And the 9 is like, I feel so close to everybody. Is everybody okay? Now they're not really offering to help. They just want to make sure you're okay. The 1 is like, there's not enough food groups represented here. We needed at least 3 green vegetables. And a proper meat, proper vegetables, and a starch. Like there's a right way to host a meal. And the 2s are like, this is so great. I feel needed. Can I give you more? And the 3 is like, I need to run. I'm swamped. I got stuff to do. Like things to achieve. The 4 is like, cheap caviar. Shocking. Right? Because remember, they're romantic. They're the artist. They're prone to the dramatic. The 5 is like, it's a talkative group. Good. That gets me off the hook. And they can just sit there and analyze and evaluate and be in their mind. And the 6 is like, is she leaving early? Does she not like us? Has the mayonnaise been out too long? And the 7 is like, first I'll eat, then I'll take some pictures, then I'll go to my class. Like, and then we're all going to a party. Like they always know what the post party is after the dinner event, right? So this is a cute book if you're like not as much of a reader and you want to see, kind of the book done in graphics. There are plenty of websites that are out there now that do graphics of the numbers, but that's kind of fun. All right, so we made it through all of them on time, with just a few minutes left. I was very successful. Yay. I managed my time well. Yay.
Get you a gold star.
Thank you.
So I think just to see if there's any other questions about the numbers, if you have any questions, put those in the chat. I think we talked about finding some what are some resources that we can use?
Sure. And Ryan, you or I could do some posting. A couple people have already mentioned some resources, and those are great. Probably one of my go-tos is the Enneagram Institute, and I'll put that link in. It is a comprehensive website. It is incredibly well organized. They host conferences around the world. They're really good at talking about healthy and unhealthy traits. You can also sign up for their daily email. So I get a daily email about what it means to live life as a 3. And sometimes it says really annoying stuff like, imagine that you get nothing done today. Take an extra long lunch. And I'm like, why would I get nothing done today? And why would I take an extra long lunch? That is so inefficient and ineffective. And I will never achieve anything if I do nothing. And some of y'all are like, this lady is crazy. Like, and then my friend, she's a 7. You know, hers is like, don't rush off to the next fun thing. Stay focused on one task today and get it completely done. And she's like, that's horrible. Like, we often read each other's emails and I'm like, can I take your email because I do that naturally? And you can take my email because I don't do that so naturally, and we'll trade and we'll both feel really good about ourselves. But the reason we want to know ourselves is to know what are our limitations? What are our barriers? What are our growing edges? You know, we've been called to be, you know, trees planted by a stream of living water. And where are our roots kind of getting blocked out? What barriers have we put up? So Enneagram Institute is great. They'll send you a daily email. Obviously, Ian Morgan Cron book. He also does a lot of podcasts. So if you are an auditory learner, you have a lot of alone time, you want to do research, he does some really amazing interviews with folks of each number. You know, so you can find either maybe folks you know or admire, but he usually talks to them about like their joys and struggles of the number. And it does have I would say a Christian light feel to it, like not explicitly evangelical, but you definitely pick up themes. Like he interviews the guys who do the Bible Project, and one of them's a 5. Of course he is. He's researched the Bible and has now made videos. And then the other's a 7 and wanted this creative adventure. So there are 5 and a 7 for the Bible Project. So I've obviously mentioned the Ennea app. I love it. I go to it all the time. It's my kind of go-to short form. There's a lot of folks on Instagram. Enneagram and Coffee is one I follow. Enneagram and Joy. I know someone else mentioned one earlier. So, you know, like there are a lot of resources out there. I would give one word of warning. Read your Bible more than you read about the Enneagram. Mostly I'm speaking to myself. But it's true. Like I'm like, oh, I want to be really great at the Enneagram, and it's so much easier than the Bible because the Bible's complicated and not originally written in English. So yeah, so find a good balance of studying the Enneagram and, more importantly, reading your Bible, praying.
Yes, I'll second that, because the Enneagram is useful in, at least for me, helping me find a lot of the ways that I distract myself and keep myself from growing. So it can become just another distraction if you don't prioritize spiritual growth and you're just trying to learn for the sake of learning more.
You know, as we said earlier, the goal in this is to know and love yourself, the best and worst of yourself, to know and love your neighbor, the best and worst of them, and to know and love God, who created all of us and loves us unconditionally. So let me give you a little idea of where we're going next week. Next week, we are going to talk about wings. Okay, imagine you're a chicken. I'm the chicken, right? So I am a 3. That means I can have a 2-wing or a 4-wing. I cannot have anything but a 2 or a 4-wing. Your wings have to be adjacent to you. We are going to learn about how, little tidbit. As a small child, I wanted to be a professional mashed potato tester. My parents had told me that there are people who taste test chocolates and wines and go to fancy restaurants. And in my opinion, there was no food better than mashed potatoes. Ironically, I married a guy from Idaho. But I consider myself to be mashed potatoes. They are amazing. They are comforting. They fill you up, right? I'm mashed potatoes. I got a wing, a 2-wing, or a 4-wing, or maybe I got both wings. 2s are green beans. They're super healthy, because remember, 2s are helpers. The 4-wing, those really artsy, romantic, creative types, they are obviously cranberry sauce. This is just my Thanksgiving meal laid out for you, right? I will always be mashed potatoes, but what happens when I pick up that flavoring of the green beans? I'm a 3 with a 2-wing. I got a little green bean flavoring in my mashed potatoes. Or oops, or yay, I got a little of that, cranberry sauce flavoring because from that 4. So sometimes you might test and see like, oh, I keep testing as a 9, but I also always have 1 a little lower. And maybe your number is you're still you, but you're picking up the flavoring of what's on the sides of you. Or maybe what your number is wasn't affirmed as a child or in your household. And so you start picking up different traits. So we're going to talk about wings. Someone can do the chicken dance for us next week. We're going to talk about wings next week. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is where we go. Oh, thank you. Thank you for those who are doing the chicken dance. It is much appreciated. The other thing we're going to talk about next week is where we go in health and stress. And let's see. I was going to try to bring up that graphic again. Here it is. All right. So, you got to see some of our acolytes at church. That's not the graphic. Oh, let's see. No, that's not working. Let's try again. All right. If you look, it says my screen is paused. Yeah, it really wants to show you these acolytes. I'm not certain why. All right, but if you go back to the graphic, and we'll work on getting it back up in a minute, but when you go to the graphic that you've seen when you registered or that you'll see on a lot of the websites, one of the things that you're going to notice is there are arrows, and it's talked about in the book too. Do y'all see me? My screen is being very funny.
We see you. And
okay, you see me. Okay, perfect. Sorry, my screen is my screen was going a little berserk, and I was afraid I froze. Okay, so we're going to talk about where you go in stress and health. You're going to see a number going away from you and a number coming towards you. We'll get you some resources. One of the things that we want to be is we all want to be healthier. We all want to be more grounded. We all have the potential for growth. We are going to look at some of the traits that you encounter when you are healthier. You never become someone you're not. You are always you. I will always be mashed potatoes. But maybe I've learned that I want to lean into some of the gifting of other numbers. So 3s, when we are really healthy, because 3s are pretty success-driven, really goal-driven, really worried about ourselves, we pick up some of the best traits of a 6 when we're healthy. We become more community-oriented. We become more safety-oriented. We become more aware of the success of the whole versus our individual success. When 3s become really unhealthy and we're afraid that we're going to fail, instead of playing the game, we just quit. We're like, peace out. I'm not playing anymore. And what we do is we become the worst of a 9. We become incredibly reclusive. We become incredibly withdrawn. We are unable to make a decision. And usually we're good decision makers. For example, on Sunday, I had a low moment. Maybe some of you have had low moments during this pandemic. I love people. I'm an extreme extrovert. I love people. Wanted to see my friends, missing my church community. Sunday afternoon, I said to my husband, I'm lonely. He's like, I hear you, but you saw, we had the kids here all weekend. And you did church online and you have friends. You're not lonely. I'm here. And I'm like, I'm so lonely. I didn't get to use any of my pastoral gifts today. This video is 5 weeks old. It was the last time I recorded, and I am lonely, and I am not being efficient, and I am not being effective, and all I am doing is commenting on Facebook. I'm a failure. And so I'm going to bed because I can do nothing right. And I literally covered myself in a blanket on the sofa. I had a full meltdown, comparable to what your 3-year-olds do. And then I took a nap, and then I got myself together, and then I realized, you know what? I actually could do some productive things. And I do have resources. I could pray, I could run, I could get some stuff done in the garage because getting stuff done feels good. So when I start becoming really indecisive, when I start shutting down and failing to participate or engage, that lets me know something's wrong. And we're going to look at that for each of the numbers next week. Sort of what happens when you get really stressed out. What do you do when you're unhealthy? So you can try not to do that because you have a choice to do something different. So that's a little bit about where we're going next week. So wings and where people go in stress and health. What else do you want to add to that, Ryan? Like 10 minutes to go.
So first of all, I want to say that it seems like a lot of your metaphors are Thanksgiving related, and I really appreciate that and enjoy that.
You're welcome.
And then I just saw there's a question from Janice in the chat asking, what if you have two very close results from different triads? And I'm not entirely sure if she means,
Sure. So like
close on score, or they're, if it's like a 7 and an 8, then that's probably a wing.
Yes. So if they're next to each other, it's probably one of them is your number and the other is a wing. The other thing I would get curious about is take your top numbers and see if they are where one of the numbers goes in stress or health. Like, I'm a 3. If my second highest number was a 6, it would be, oh, wow, I'm a 3, but I'm really leaning into that being healthy version of myself. If it said 3, 9, like that triad, if you have 3, 6, 9s together, you're going to be one of those most likely. And you're just either a healthy or unhealthier version of yourself. I say that, also, 1, 4, 7 goes together. So if you're one of those numbers and one of those other numbers are high, you can see how they travel. So yeah, I mean, feel free to text, I'll give everybody my email address. You're welcome to email me. We'll talk about it more next week. But if you, I don't know you, so I don't know how you, like, what motivates you when you're happy or what motivates you when you're stressful but happy to try to figure out some patterns. And Ryan, I'm guessing you would be willing to do the same.
Yeah, yes, certainly. I definitely would. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, remember the goal in this, in the Enneagram, keep coming back to what motivates you, what inspires you. Most of us are motivated and inspired by things that give us comfort, things we want affirmed. What is the greatest reward you could be given? Which is a very 3 thing, right? Like 3s love rewards and success and achieving. But if someone could come up to you and say, Ryan, you are the most peaceful person I know. You are the best I know at bringing a group of diverse opinions together and making sure everyone feels heard. Like, what is the biggest compliment? Or, wow, Lori, you are the funnest person I know. When there's a party, I want you there because you are the best 7. You will make sure everyone has a good time. You will not let it end early. You will make sure Jesus turned plenty of water into wine. And not only will you host a party, you're going to have the after party and you're going to have the fall picnic and the church's like celebration done, right? What would make you feel so affirmed? Like if you're an 8, for someone to say, oh my goodness, thank you. You stood up for the weak in the room. You challenged authorities of oppression and injustice. You stood up for the voiceless and we need you. And you went, oh my goodness, I did. So maybe, I don't know if you're a 7, Lori, but rumor has it you might be. So I was just kind of leaning into it. Lori commented in the chat asking if she thought she was a 7. And I've heard the rumor that she might be. I don't know. I won't speak for Lori. Lori has her own voice. She can speak for herself. But supposedly it's a possibility. All right. What else? I mean, there's a lot more content, but mostly y'all took the time to like turn on your computers and show up. So I want to make sure I answer your questions.
I will remind people too, because we're going to do this at the same time next Wednesday. And as Catherine said, we're going to talk about wings and then movement and stress and health. And I feel like the movement and stress and health is one of the big advantages that the Enneagram has, and one of the reasons that I like it a lot. So I want to take this opportunity to remind people, if you only registered for this Zoom meeting, you're not going to get the link for the other one. So make sure you register for the second one if you want to be part of that. And that's in the midweek, that's on Facebook group. So make sure that you're registered for both, because if you just register for one, the link is not going to work next week.
Very helpful information. A couple other things. As you read the book, I do think the book is helpful. There are a lot of other books. I'll take a few moments and try to type up some of the books I have here. I heard that y'all are focusing on some relationship pieces as a congregation. If anyone is really focusing on that, I recommend this book, The Enneagram and Love and Work by Helen Palmer. And it is a great resource because it is organized like what happens when, like with an 8 and a 3. Typically we get along really well. 8s and 3s really like each other because we get a lot done. 8s are challengers, 3s get stuff done. Like we're pushing hard, we're leaving the rest of you behind. You don't have time to take your questions or your curiosities. We're just going. But what happens when you put a 7 and a 9 in a room? We have some staff meetings with 7s and 9s in the room. And when they're maybe not healthy, they didn't get a great night's sleep. They didn't eat breakfast. They have whatever the thorn of their flesh is annoying them, as Paul would say. A 7 who wants to keep going forward and a 9 who just wants to keep the peace sometimes can be a little challenging because the 7 is excited and energetic and the 9's like, slow down. Is everybody on board? Did we sign off with the right committee? Does everybody know what we're doing? And the 7's like, move it, Buster. Like, we got things to get done. And the 9's like, but did we run it by Miss So-and-so? Her Sunday school class has been in there forever. Yeah, Lori's like losing it, right? So that's a really helpful book if you know what your maybe spouse or your partner's number is, or children's or coworkers or bosses or folks who support you. It's been really helpful with in the work I do with my administrative assistant. My administrative assistant is an 8, which is not very normal. And she can be really challenging. And sometimes I'm like, why are you pushing up on me? Like, I'm just asking you to help me. I need you to be a 2, not an 8. And she's like, I need this program to go really well. And you're doing it not the way that it probably could be done. And you didn't think about the people in the room who don't feel invited and don't feel welcomed. And I'm like, you stop challenging me for a moment? And I'm like, oh, wait, that's who God created her to be. We need her to be that way. She will also say she probably doesn't want to be an administrative assistant forever because it doesn't always lean into her like gifts. Because a lot of times I just need her to be a helper too. So we're going to see how some of those personality types impact each other and what we do when we're healthy and unhealthy.
Yeah. And am I muted? Okay.
Nope,
and Catherine mentioned relationships. So the loving team talked about using this as a jumping off point and to get together some couples roundtables to kind of talk about relationships in the Enneagram. And I do not have in front of me what dates we set for that. So if Lori or if Leslie or Andrea or if Pam Wilds is out there, if y'all know that, can you put it in the chat and we'll get it in an email. But I also see Jenny Smith has a question in here regarding how do we differentiate what motivates us innately and what motivates us as a result of conditioning, and does it really matter?
All right, so there is a great debate out in the world. Is your number, because that's the way you were raised, like that's who you are, that's who God made you to be, or are you conditioned? Is it nature or nurture? Like that debate in most circles of parenting and rearing and sheeping, it is a debate. Some folks will say if you live in a healthy household, that probably whatever you were innately made to be is who you remain, because that was affirmed and that was complimented and you are not afraid to be weak and vulnerable. But I have my friend who I shared of who's a 9 and she's now a therapist. She grew up in a very divided, unhealthy household where her parents were constantly fighting and bickering with each other. And she had to be the peacekeeper between 2 parents who did not want to interact well, who often failed to parent in a healthy fashion. And she said, I probably was always really sort of a 9. Like I was a introvert, like not as much introverted, but just a very peaceful kid. I was happy reading books. I was happy just sort of being. But she's like, I learned very quickly there couldn't be 3 people rocking the boat in my family. My mom and dad were always rocking the boat and someone had to keep the peace. And so that's who I became. And she's like, maybe that's who I was. She's like, I don't know. Many folks say you don't really know your Enneagram number till your early to mid 20s. Some of that may, though, have to do with how healthy of a household you grew up in, how much you are allowed to be the best version of yourself. I think it's a little both. I know, Ryan, you've shared, I think I was always a 3. I mean, I always wanted to be a straight A student. I always wanted to be first in line. I always was really driven. I've always, and thankfully, I think I had parents who affirmed that. But you've shared that you've seen maybe how life has shaped you a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, from an early age, was the peacekeeper in the household between parents who, thankfully, once I graduated high school, got divorced, because sometimes that's the healthiest thing that can happen in a marriage, unfortunately. But yeah, so I spent a whole lot of time going back and forth and sort of peacemaking. So whatever I was innately may not be what I am now, because I think a lot of that shaped the way that I see the world.
And I am also mindful that some people in life experience horrible trauma, and that trauma can radically impact us and change us, and that while God can pull the pieces back together, often with really good therapists and medication and time and prayer and healing, that sometimes there are events in our lives that just fundamentally change who we are, and may shape us to live in a certain way, because all of us, want ultimately to be safe. And all of us have a fear of not being safe and not being accepted or welcomed or included. And so we do what we need to do to feel welcome at the table. And some of us do that a little bit more than others, but I think it's like probably a combination of both, but I would hope that you would know sort of yourself well. I would have never thought I was a 3, like just first taking the test, but I am. At nature, nurture, probably a combination of the two. However, I can tell you, like, and my stepkids who have only known probably 5 years, 2 of them, I'm confident of what they are. The other 2, I'm like, I don't know. And maybe it's because I don't know them well enough, or maybe it's because they're still growing, or maybe it's because they act a little different around me than they might their friends or other people. But I guess as long as you kind of know who you are and how to be a healthier version of you, it doesn't matter how you got there. It matters what you're willing to do with it now that you know it.
So we are at time, and I want to give one last chance, just if anybody has any last questions, you can put them in there, or you can think through them and then use them next week. So I will make sure that the registration link to the second one goes out again in case people missed it, because I know there were 51 people registered this week, and there were fewer than that registered next week. So I think there may have been a discrepancy. And I will take some of the notes that Catherine and I have that have the resources and share them with the people who registered for this group, so that you don't have to try and look back through it. And I will, this is the first time I'm trying to do this. So I have recorded this, and we will see where we can put it. I'm going to work with Allison, our communications director. It kind of depends on the file size, but I wanted to make sure that people who couldn't be here live were able to see this. So keep an eye out for that as well. So if you missed anything, you're like, oh, that was really interesting, and I don't remember exactly what we said, you can always watch it again. But with all that said, I want to see if Lori would mind closing us in prayer.
I'd be happy to. As a possible 7, I'm willing. Let's pray together. Gracious God, thank you for self-knowledge. Thank you for an opportunity to learn more about who we are so that we can impact your world for the good. And thank you so much for Catherine and for her wisdom and for the time she has spent studying this and for her willingness to share with us tonight. Thank you that I got to see these faces, and I pray that you would keep us all safe. And I look forward to seeing everybody again next week. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you,
Catherine.
Thank you. And I'll stick around for just a minute if someone's like, I have a question, I didn't know how to type it. Ryan, I don't know how quickly you need to go. So I'll stick around if anyone just has like either quick feedback of like, you got my number wrong, or I have a question about a number.
Thanks, everybody. if you don't have anything for Catherine, you can cycle out. We'll be back next week.
Yep. And I'll make sure I register for next week because I'm one of those folks who still needs to register.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Oh, thank you. This was a ton of fun. Really good to be together, and feel free to share any of the notes we sent along if those are helpful for anyone.
Hey, Catherine.
Hey, Andrew.
Did Richard Rohr say that we all start out as 9s?
That's a good question. I haven't heard that quote by Richard Rohr.
No,
I know
no. Did I misread his Enneagram book?
Debbie is saying no, and Debbie knows.
She knows. Okay.
I mean, I've read a decent amount of Richard Rohr, and I have seen him.
I was rereading his book last week on Enneagram.
But I don't.
Enneagram book is so long.
I know. His book is way longer.
I will say I do appreciate those folks. Ian does it well in his presentation, who talk about how Jesus embodies each of these numbers.
Right.
Like how Jesus is the Prince of Peace, but Jesus also was a challenger who flipped over, the tables, and how Jesus is our perfection. He is the, and how Jesus is the ultimate helper, and Jesus got it done, like saved us, and like Jesus is an artist and appreciated beauty. So I do, I feel bad leaving out the other numbers, but like Jesus, so.
If I can just.
Yeah, Debbie.
People can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that in Richard Rohr's book, he has, in the Enneagram symbol, right in the center, he puts the picture of Jesus, the face of Jesus, because he is all of them. He's the best of them all. He's the culmination.
Yeah, so I will say, as someone who's not a 9.
This is just a curiosity question.
Yeah, so I don't know that quote. He may have said it and then said it and meant it, or said it and amended it. I don't know though. I've met a lot of babies. I did children's ministry for a long time. Yeah. They are not very peaceful, and they do not seek peace. So I don't know if we're all like wired to be peacekeepers. I met some kids who from like at a young age are like tyrants. In the most God created, beloved way possible. So
Debbie, you studied with Richard Rohr, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yes, that's where I first learned it, was from him. Yeah, and I never heard that. No, he does say that most of the people in the world and in the U.S. are 6s, but I've never heard the 9.
Yeah, Ian Morgan Crone has he has something about 6s where he's like, being a 6 in America is like being an alcoholic who lives above a bar or something.
Yeah, but folks have said, the reason we have a lot of 6s is because they survive. Like the 7s jump off a cliff. And hopefully they survive, but they were going to have some fun. It's okay, Lori, I love skydiving, so I'm with you. I'll jump too. Like the 6s are so safety oriented, so that they do survive. When the rest of us, like the 8 gets in a fist fight, the 9, fails to speak up. We can talk about all the other numbers, but 6s are really, kind of in an evolutionary standpoint, are created to survive.
Yeah, they're like the worker bees.
Mm-hmm. So.
I'm not one of those people.
I'm not either.
Well, I think you probably got some triplets coming in, so we
Yeah.
won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much, Catherine.
It certainly wasn't taking up my time. It was a privilege. It's nice getting to meet you. Nice to meet you, Leslie, Debbie, Andrew, Lori. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Catherine.
I'll see y'all next week. And Andrew, let's check in maybe Monday-ish just to see if anyone sent you questions so we can make sure we get it in sort of our order of things next week.
Sounds awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.